I just wanted to say goodnight. It was supposed to be a simple motherly gesture. Nothing more. I opened my son's bedroom door softly, expecting to find him half asleep tucked under his blankets, maybe mumbling something incoherent, but instead, I froze it. Was not my son lying there. It was his best friend. He sat at the edge of the bed, his gaze meeting mine with a look that was steady, unreadable almost. Daring for a moment, the air grew heavier. The room felt too small in the silence, roared between us. Knew I should have turned away, said something broken, whatever strange current had sparked between us. But I stood there, heartbeat, thundering, caught in a feeling. I had no words for a feeling that would change everything. I could not move at first. His presence caught me so off guard that my mind struggled to catch up with what my eyes were seeing. My son's best friend Tyler was not a boy anymore. When had that happened? In my mind, he had always been that awkward teenager tagging along after soccer practice, raiding our fridge for snacks, laughing too loudly at silly jokes. But now, in the low glow of the bedside lamp, he looked different, taller, broader, his face carrying a kind of quiet confidence that was so unexpected, it stole my breath. I stumbled over an apology, my voice barely above a whisper. But he only smiled, soft and unthreatening, as if he understood the confusion flickering. Inside me, I told myself to leave, to close the door and pretend nothing had happened yet. For some reason, my hand stayed on the door, knob frozen. He just fell asleep. Tyler said, his voice low, respectful, but there was something else buried under. His words, a kind of gentle daring that made my skin prickle. He nodded stiffly, mumbling something about blankets, about making sure he was comfortable, ridiculous excuses to explain. While I was still standing there, I crossed the room, feeling the weight of his gaze on me too, aware of my lucid shirt, the soft brush of my bare feet and the carpet, the intimacy of the night. Pressing in on all sides as I pulled the spare blanket over him, son's sleeping form, I could feel Tyler watching me. It was not invasive. It was something else. Entirely. Something unsettlingly tender. I tucked the blanket under my son's chin, lingering longer than necessary, giving myself an excuse to keep my back turned when I finally dared to glance over my shoulder. Tyler was still sitting there, still silently waiting, his hands resting loosely between his knees, his expression unreadable but note and kind. I forced a smile, trying to break the strange tension. Long day. I asked, my voice embarrassingly breathless. He chuckled, a low sound that rumbled in his chest. "Yeah," he said, "but this is nice." I frowned slightly, confused. "What is?" He tilted his head, studying me like I was a puzzle he way-stringed to figure out. "Being here with you." My heart stuttered. I told myself he did not mean it that way. Of course he did not. He was just being polite, grateful for the years I had welcomed him into our home. That was all. I gathered up the spare pillow and moved to the closet, pretending to be busy kneading something. Anything to do with my hands. I heard him stand up behind me. The soft creak of the mattress, as his weight shifted every nerve in my body, went rigid. Anticipation and panic tangled together. "You always made this place feel like home," he said, softly, closer now. The warmth of his words brushing against the back of my neck. I swallowed, hard, feeling ridiculously emotional at such a simple statement. I turned around slowly, forcing a casual laugh. "That is what moms do," I said lightly. He smiled at me, but it was Asad's smile, one that carried more than just gratitude. "Not everyone is lucky to have a mom like you," he said. His eyes darkened. Earnest for a second, everything blurred. I saw Tyler not as my son's best friend, not as the boy who had grown up in our living room, but as a young man standing in front of me, offering a kind of vulnerable honesty that cracked something deep. Inside me, I wanted to tell him he was wrong, that I was just a woman who had tried her best often, failing often, doubting. But I could not find the words. Instead, silence stretched between us, Again, thick trembling charged with something neither of us dared to name, brushed. Past him murmuring a good night, desperate to put space between us. But as I reached the door, he touched my wrist lightly, hesitantly, his fingers barely grazed my skin. But it was enough. I froze my heart, hammering against my ribs. I looked up at him, ready to tell him to stop, to remind him of the boundaries we could not cross. But when I saw his face, saw the hesitation, the longing, the deep respect in his eyes, I could not speak the word. Outside the room faded. There was only this moment suspended in a delicate balance between right and wrong, between fear and something far or dangerous, something that felt itchingly real. I pulled my hand away gently, not because I was angry, but because I was scared of how easy it would be not to goodnight Tyler. I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. He nodded, stepping back, letting me go, but his eyes never left mine until the door clicked softly shut between us. And even then, long after I slipped into my own bed, I could still feel his gaze burning on mine. Skin a silent question, left hanging in the dark. An answer. The next morning I moved through the house as if nothing had happened. I busied myself with making coffee, straightening the living room, pretending that the strange charged moment between Tyler and me had been nothing more than a byproduct of a long emotional night. But deep down, I knew better. Every time I caught a glimpse of the closed door, Tomi-san's room of flesh would rise to my cheeks, and I hated how easily my body betrayed me be noon. My son and Tyler were up laughing over breakfast, shoving each other like they always did watching them. I could almost believe that the night before had been a dream, a strange, wistful dream that had no place in the light of day. I smiled, made small talk, and forced myself to maintain the distance I knew was necessary. Tyler never mentioned it either, though every now and then I would catch him, looking at me across the kitchen table, his gaze lingering just a second, too long, making my heart race all over again. That night after my son went to Afrin's house for a sleepover, I thought I would finally get some peace. I curled up on the couch with a book, determined to lose myself in fiction, but my mind kept wandering. Every sound in the house seemed amplified, every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind against the windows. I was so lost in thought that, when I heard footsteps behind me, I jumped. It was Tyler. He stood there awkwardly, one hand rubbing the back of his neck, his eyes uncertain. "Sorry," he said. "I did not mean to scare you." I smiled weakly, setting my book aside. "It is fine, I was just distracted." He hesitated, then sat down at the far end of the couch. The distance between us was polite, appropriate, but the air was thick again, humming with all the things we were trying not to say. We made small talk for a few minutes about school, about my son's crazy plans for the weekend, but it felt forced. Hollow. Finally, Tyler fell silent. I glanced over at him and found him watching me again, that same unreadable look in his eyes. "Can I ask you something?" he said quietly. My stomach twisted. I nodded. Even though part of me screamed, "To run last night," he began, then stopped, struggling forwards. "Did I make you uncomfortable?" I opened my mouth to deny it, automatically, but the truth caught in my throat. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not just the young man he'd become, but the boy who had always looked to me for guidance, for comfort, and now somehow for something more. "No," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. "You did not." He let out a slow breath like he had been holding it in all day. He leaned forward slightly, Hyzabos resting on his knees, his hands clasped tightly. "Together, I do not want to make things weird," he said. I have always," he trailed, off, shaking his head as if the words were too dangerous to speak, loud. I waited, my heart hammering. "I have always thought you were incredible," he finished in a rush, his cheeks flushing red. Not just beautiful, but strong. Kind, you always made me feel safe. Wanted even when I did not feel that way. Anywhere else, the sincerity in his voice broke something open inside me. I felt tears sting my eyes, but I blinked them away. I wanted to tell him that he was just confused, that I was too old, that this was wrong on so many levels. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. Tyler shifted closer, still cautious, still giving me every chance to say no. You are not just my friend's mom, he said, his voice low. Andro, you are. You are you. I felt the warmth of his presence, the tension stretching so tightly between us. It was almost painful. Slowly. Without thinking, I reached out and touched his hand. Just a simple touch. But the way he responded, the way his fingers curled around mine, so gently, so reverently, made my chest ache. You should not, I whispered, even as I laced my fingers through his. Maybe not. He agreed, his eyes never leaving mine, but I cannot help how I feel the truth was. Neither could I before I knew it. Helene in it was not a bold move. It was sighted, almost shy-like. He was asking permission with every inch he crossed. I could have stopped him. I should have. But when his lips brushed, mine soft and tentative, I melted into him. The kiss was feather light at first. A mere question when I did. Not pull away. He grew bolder, cupping my cheek with one trembling hand, deepening the kiss in a way that made my entire body light up with heat and longing. I threaded my fingers through, his hair feeling the silky strands slip between them. My heart pounded so hard, I thought he might hear. His hands moved too, my waist, tentative and respectful, as if I might vanish if he touched too hard. Every part of me felt alive in a way I had not experienced in years. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing heavily, our foreheads resting together. I am sorry, he whispered, though he did not sound sorry at all. I laughed softly, a broken, breathless sound. I am not. He smiled, a real, brilliant smile that made him look so young and vulnerable, that it made my heart twist. Painfully. Neither am I, admitted we. Sat there for a long moment, just holding each other, neither of us, ready to let go of the fragile, beautiful thing we had just uncovered. I knew this could not last. I knew there would be consequences, complications, regrets. But right then, in the soft cocoon of the night, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the simple, overwhelming truth. I was seen. It was wanted. I was alive, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself believe. I deserved it. The days that followed were filled with silence, wrapped in noise. My son never suspected a thing. He came and went, laughed with Tyler, shared meals with me, like everything was exactly as it had always been, but everything had changed. I had changed, and I was terrified that it showed. I would catch glimpses of myself in the mirror and barely recognize the woman staring back. There was color in her cheeks. He has a light in her, eyes that had not been there in years. But there was something else too, a flicker of shame. She was trying to bury beneath her, smiled Tyler, had stayed the rest of the weekend, and we had danced around each other like gravity was working over time, always pulling us closer, always one step from falling. We never spoke about the kiss, but every time we were alone, there thickened every glance. Lasted a little, longer than it should have. Every casual touch lingered just a second too long. And then Monday came. Real life resumed its place, unapologetic in its routine. Tyler went back to campus. My son returned to school, and I was left with the quiet. But it was not peace. It was deafening. I replayed everything over and over. The touch of his lips, the softness of his hands, the way he looked at me, like I was more than just a passing moment. I should have been disgusted with myself. I should have felt regret. But what I felt instead was more dangerous longing. I wanted to hear from him. I wanted to know if he was thinking about me the way I was thinking about him, but I was also terrified he might reach out, because I did not trust myself to say the right thing. Then one night, just after I had finished cleaning up dinner, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Tyler. "Are you okay?" Simple, harmless. But my hands trembled as Isteret added, "I waited a full hour before replying. And even then, all I could manage was I do not. No." His reply came. Instantly, me neither. And just like that, the floodgates reopened. The conversations were cautious. At first, we talked about school, about my sin, about books and music, but underneath every message was an unspoken thread that tied us together. Quiet, yearning a confession. Neither of us dared to put into words. One evening, he sent me a photo of the sky, a deep orange sunset, bleeding. Into purple reminded me of you. My chest dashed. How could something so simple feel? So intimate, I began to question. Everything. Own boundaries. My principles, the life I had built was, I lonely absolutely. Was this at a distraction? Maybe. But it felt like more than that. It felt like the first time in years that someone had seen me not as a mother, not as someone's ex-wife, but as a woman still. The guilt noted at me. I would lie awake at night staring at the ceiling, wondering what kind of example I was, setting what would happen if my son ever found out. What would it do to their friendship to mine with him? And yet the thought of severing whatever, it was that, had begun between Tyler and me felt like cutting off my own breath. One Friday evening, my son told me he would be out late. Some group projector, maybe just another excuse to hang with friends. I nodded, pretending not to care, but the moment he left, I felt the weight of anticipation crash over me. I did not know if Tyler would come. We had not made plans, but part of me hoped he would. He did. He arrived an hour later, quietly, slipping into the house, as though we had rehearsed this in another life. When I opened the door, our eyes locked, and nothing needed to be said. We sat across from each other in the living room. Veselance was both comfortable and tense, like the pause before a storm. He looked older, somehow more serious, but there was still that boyish charm tucked beneath the weight of something deeper. "I do not want to hurt anyone," I whispered. He nodded. "Neither do I, but we already are," I added, my voice cracking. Tyler leaned forward, his eyes full of sincerity. "Then tell me to leave, and I will." But I could not. Because the truth was, in that moment, I did not want him to go, not because I was weak. Not because I was selfish, but because with him I felt seen. Felt known, and, after so many years of disappearing inside everyone else's needs, I wanted to exist for myself, even if just for a night. The room felt impossibly still. As Tyler waited for my answer, my heart pounded against my ribs, screaming for clarity I did not have. A part of me, the part trained by years of motherhood, responsibility and quiet, sacrifice, wanted to send him away close, the door, and pretend none of this had ever happened. But another part, quieter but stronger, begged me to choose, differently, to choose myself. I took a breath, a long, shaking breath that seemed to stretch across. "Years of loneliness, I cannot," I said. "Finally, I cannot tell you to leave." Relief flashed across his face, but he did not move. He waited, patient, respectful, terrified, just like me. Slowly, cautiously, I reached for his, and his fingers wrapped around mine, warm and steady, grounding me. We sat like that for a long time, two people on the edge of 1,000 wrongs, daring to choose something that felt right. Even if only in this fragile moment, we did not rush. There were no promises made, no future written, just the acknowledgement of something rare and real, blooming quietly between, as maybe it would break, as maybe it would save us. I did not know. All I knew was that for the first time in a very long time, I felt alive, and that I decided, was worth everything.